All right, so this week, super excited. Last week, if you remember, if you didn't watch last week, by the way, we put all of the previous episodes of Try This at Work on our website, TryThisAt.Work, not .com, but .work. And so last week we had Steve Wynn from our Yammer product team come on, and we walked through kind of an intro to employee engagement. He showed off a couple of new capabilities that are coming right around the corner with Yammer. This week, we're going to introduce you to some new scenarios that are really powered by Yammer, but also leveraging a lot of the other important assets at Microsoft. And so I'm super excited to walk through this with you. Just to recap, we spent a lot of our time on the right-hand side of this slide, where again, we talked about leveraging Yammer for that employee engagement. A lot of customers are looking for ways to attract and retain good talent. They're looking for ways for leadership teams to really engage with all their employees, whether that employee's been there for a day or for 30 years. They're looking for ways to connect the different, what used to be silos within companies to help make that company run a lot more efficient and prevent things like reinventing the wheel multiple times by different people within one single organization. So Yammer's got tons of value in any organization, but we're going to take it to the next level today. We're going to really introduce you to two different, or maybe perhaps even three different scenarios. And so I'm super excited today. I have a really good friend and colleague that's part of the Yammer product team. His name is Angus Florence. He's actually presenting today at, I think it's midnight in Australia, but he's located in Australia. He used to be based out of Redmond. So he's going to walk you through the very first scenario that we're going to talk to you about this morning, powered by Yammer, but it's all about this Q&A bot. So Angus, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Brent. And just before we begin, thank you very much for having me on the show. Very excited to be here. Always love your work. And just for those watching, I am also a Wobo man myself and a big fan of them. So can highly recommend the Wobo wallet.
Awesome. There you go.
Okay. So a couple of scenarios I want to talk to you about today is around bots. Now, bots is certainly, they come up a lot. They seem to be the flavor of the month. Everyone wants to do bots. And often people come to me in Yammer, like, when's Yammer going to do bots? What bots can Yammer do? And when you dig in and try and find out what sort of bots they're talking about, often it's things like filling out forms, whether it's HR forms or how much leave do I have or timesheets. And those type of scenarios I don't necessarily think fit well with a product like Yammer, particularly when you think about those out-of-loop scenarios that you spoke about earlier, Brent. So, the core value of Yammer is really around leadership engagement and these communities, and communities of interest, communities of practice. And so if you think about this inside your organization today, if you use Yammer or any other type of community tool, or even with outside of technology, you're going to be part members of teams or groups or communities where someone is an expert, or maybe you're the expert, and you'll find today that people will come to you with their specific questions, and maybe it's the same question over and over and over again. So, for example, in Microsoft, we have a Yammer technical sales group where people like Brent and his team can come in and post questions around how certain things in Yammer work, so they can go back and solve their customers' problems. Now, a lot of the time we get the same questions again and again and again and again. And so what if, instead of having myself and Steve having to answer those same questions all the time, we could only tap those experts on the shoulder when the community or the knowledge base that the community's built up over time hasn't already heard the answer before. So what I'm going to do is show you how that works in real life. I'm just going to share my screen, and Brent, if you can switch across to my content, I'll show you how we think about this in Yammer. So we've built a bot using out-of-the-box tools as part of Microsoft 365. So in the back end, this is using Microsoft Flow to do a lot of the rules and processing. We're also leveraging it's called Q&A Maker, which sits on top of Azure services, which I'll show you that quickly as well. But basically, the way that works is, imagine this is a community for HR. And if you're in HR, you'll get field questions all the time around leave, about vacation, or pay, or bonuses, or all kind of benefits, all kinds of stuff. So what if you could take all that knowledge that you've built up over the years, and maybe you've got it in FAQ documents or process documents, upload it to the Azure Q&A Maker, so you can index and use machine learning to do that, and then just use bots to answer questions. So you can see in this example, I'm going to ask a relatively simple question: how much vacation time do I get as a new employee? So I'm going to post this to a Yammer group. Now, what's happening now in the background is there's a bot that's going to go and check. It's realized that there's a question posted inside this Yammer group. It's going to go and check to see if it knows the answer to this question. So it's going to go and look up a knowledge base that was already pre-built, and it's going to get, using machine learning, a response to how sure of an answer it is. So for example, if it comes back and says, so I can see it's already kicked in, so that took about 30 seconds. So it can come back and it's got the answer for me. So what's happened is it's gone to the knowledge base and said, do I know the answer to this particular question? It's got a response back from the server saying, yes, I'm a certain percentage sure. So we've set up this bot, and I'll explain this in a second. We've set up this bot to say, if it's more than 60% sure that it knows the answer, just paste it straight into the Yammer group. So you can see in this instance, it's gone, yep, I know the answer to that. And so here's the response, and we can see that's the right one. So that's a really simple simple question of how we do it. But what about if we have a question that is sort of less than 55% accurate, so it's not quite the same. So if I come back into this group and look at other ones that have been posted, in this example here, you can see someone's asked the question, what are public holidays? And so the bot has gone back and asked the service, do I know the answer to this? And it's got a response saying it's less than 60% sure that it knows the right answer. So at this point, it found an answer, but it's not sure if it's the right one. So it actually will send an email to the community expert and say, hey, here's the question. Here's the answer that I think it is, but I'm not 100% sure. Can you just confirm or deny if this is the right one? And the expert in email can just say approve, that's the right one. And once it does that, it will come back and paste that right answer into the group. So again, pretty seamless. But then what's also really clever is it looks at the way that that question was asked and adds it to the knowledge base. Not so much the answer, but the way the question was asked. So it's now starting to learn not only Q&A questions and answers, but it's also learning how people ask questions and adding those in multiple sections. And I'll show you how that works in a second. So you can see here, it's it's thought about the answer. It already knew it. It just needed confirmation. So then it's gone and posted it, and this person can move on. The final example, which I think is probably the most important, and what happens, I think, a lot of time in communities, is similar to the last one, where someone's asked a question and it's not sure, so it's gone and asked the expert, but the answer that it thought it might be right was wrong. And so this is a question that's been asked that the bot or the Q&A doesn't have an answer for today. So again, the expert gets the email and it asks the question, what is the answer to this? So then the expert can actually type in the box, the correct answer is this, and now we'll type in basically this paste of text here. And then once they hit submit, that can again gets pasted into the Yammer group. And then what's clever is that knowledge base in the backend gets updated. So what you'll notice here is this question that I asked is actually the same one I asked at the beginning, but you can see the difference between then and now is it's learnt that question from last time. So now it just pasted the response straight away. So this community and this bot is actually getting smarter and smarter over time the more it gets used, which I think is pretty clever, but in terms of communities and how they work and this type of community knowledge sharing that you're trying to get. So that's the experience for the end user. Let me just quickly jump in to show you what that looks like in the back end. So this is our knowledge base. And again, this is using a tool called Q&A Maker.ai. And this is, the service itself is free. You just need an Azure subscription to go in. I'm not going to go into the details. I've got detailed instructions I can share with you. But again, you can see it basically just creates these questions and answers. Now, what you'll find if I go through this list is here's the one, here's one that has two. So this is an example before where it's actually the same question. It's just asked in different ways. So this is one that's been sent back to the expert. It said, yes, this is the right answer, but this is a different way to ask it. And I'm going to remember that for next time. So it's going to start to use machine learning to work out different ways people ask the same question and give the same answer. And then the last example where it actually learns something new, this is where you can see it's been added by the expert through the approval process. So someone asked this question, it didn't know the answer, the expert posted the response, and then it's come back and added to this, so next time it always gets it right. So that's how the knowledge base works from a simple point of view. Now, in terms of using Flow, now I know this looks incredibly complex and hard, but the great news is I actually have a template that you can just download and then upload into Flow, which will do all this automatically for you. But basically, walking through this very quickly, you can see whenever a message is posted into a Yammer group, it checks to see if it's a question. So it'll check if there's a question mark in it. If it is, it will go and check if it knows the answer. And then if that answer is, if it's more or if it's more than 55% sure, in this case, you can see that is 55%. And then depending on the answer, it will either just post the reply. So if it's more than 55% sure, it just posts the reply straight back to Yammer. If it's not, this is where it goes and does that approval flow with the expert. So we'll go and ask the expert, hey, is this the right answer? If it is, it will go and post a message but learn how that new question was asked. If it doesn't know the answer and the expert has to supply a new one, it will come through and create that as a new item in the Q&A thing. So it's relatively simple. And again, when you get the flow template, you can just update a few variables at the beginning and it should work relatively quickly for you. Now, if we look at the Yammer blog, so if you go to aka.ms/yammer-blog, you'll get taken to the Yammer blog, and you can see here we have lots and lots and lots of content and articles in there. The one I want to call out is called crowdsourcing to create a knowledge base in Yammer. And so this is a step-by-step guide. Well, this is actually a high-level document, basically describing what I just took you through then. But if you click on any of these links around the Yammer knowledge base, you'll see it takes you to a very detailed step-by-step guide to exactly how to recreate this inside your own organization. And again, gives you those template files to download and upload to Flow, to your Flow instance, so you can quickly get up and running without having to recreate everything from scratch. So I've done this a few times, obviously know what I'm doing, but you can get this up and running in about 10 to 15 minutes by following through these instructions on how to do that. So that's the first one. The second one, which I don't have a demo for just based on time, but we've actually created a very similar one around sentiment analysis in Yammer. So again, you can imagine for that first bucket of things that we work on with Yammer around that leadership engagement, employee engagement, being able to test the sentiment of a group and how employees are reacting to certain posts or things that are happening around the company. There's a really nice simple flow, again, using Microsoft Flow, Yammer, and Azure Cognitive Services to determine and measure the score of a message posted in Yammer. So all this flow does, and again, you can download this. We have a step-by-step guide with all the zip files and everything you can upload yourself. But basically, this will give you a SharePoint list that has the message link, the message sentiment score, so a value between 0 and 100, 100 being the most positive, 0 being negative, and everything in between, and then the message body itself. And then if you just let that run for a few days, you can then start to manipulate that in Power BI or Excel and start to build out some nice dashboards around sentiment in specific Yammer groups. In fact, we use this inside our CEO connection group, which is what Sauter and his leadership team use to post and get feedback from the company. So lots of really interesting insights, and you can quickly dive in. Particularly if it's a really active group, you can quickly dive into threads that have high sentiment or low sentiment and at a glance without having to sort of scroll through and manually eyeball. So that's just two quick examples from my side. Again, they're both on the Yammer blog, and there's lots of examples. So there's the sentiment one, and then there's the crowdsourcing one, which you can see, but there's lots of other stuff on here too that's worth having a look at. So Brent, with that, I'll pass back to you because I know you've got a great example too of how to deal with how to use these types of flow integrations with sort of crisis communications in Yammer as well.
Sure do. Okay, so let me go in here, and I'm just managing the production here. So you should now be seeing my screen again. Thanks, Angus. And folks, if you're watching this, I hope you can see. It's not foreign for Angus and I to get in front of customers and we talk about Yammer. And there's, you guys have tons of priorities as an organization. And what I hope you see is how Yammer is solving for a ton of the scenarios that are probably increasingly more important to your organization. Again, I mentioned before, things like changing the company culture. How do we connect our leadership team to empower employees that are out in the field, that are sitting behind a desk or helping our customers day in and day out? And so all of these scenarios are really driven by our outer loop, we call it, engagement solution called Yammer. And so those were great examples, Angus, and I want to introduce you to another one that is increasingly being asked of me when I'm in front of our customers. And it's all about this ability to have people check in. So, there's a lot of different scenarios that can arise. I like to say that, there's a storm going through a specific town where maybe we have employees or we have facilities or we have maintenance people. And so there's often a time where we need to have those people check in with us and say, hey, the storm came through, we're okay, or whatever the case may be. Maybe you're in a facility and it's like, hey, can you make sure, we had an emergency in this particular building, check in, make sure you're okay. And so similar to what Angus showed, I'm going to show you kind of a combination of solutions here. I'm going to use Flow to capture something in Yammer. And then I'm going to also use Flow in a different way than Angus showed you, because Flow has the ability to notify your mobile device. And so, again, all this kind of hinges around your users going to Yammer and you leveraging Yammer to communicate with parts of your organization or the entire organization. So let's see what this looks like. So again, this is kind of that security alert check-in experience that we love showing our customers. So I'm in Yammer here, right? And so one of the things that I'll do first is I'm going to click on an announcement. Now, if you're new to Yammer, announcements are really special within Yammer. So what they do is it's a way for you, if you are part of the admin group of this Yammer group, you can go in and really make sure that people are going to see the content that you put into an announcement. So the way that we do that is, if you're familiar with Yammer, there's this concept of an inbox where it's all of your specific information that comes from Yammer, posts that you've replied to and people are replying to you. And announcements show up right there in your inbox within Yammer. So you're going to see that first and foremost. Also, it's going to show up at the top of your feed when you go into Yammer and check it, whether you're on your mobile device or whether you're on a PC, a Mac, or in a browser somewhere. And so what I'm doing here is I'm going to start by making this an announcement. And I'm going to basically make an announcement to the company communications group, right? So one thing I want to mention is we have this idea or this concept of a dynamic group membership within Office 365. So what that means is, as somebody comes into the organization, you can have an attribute in Azure Active Directory that says, hey, they're part of HR, so let's drop them in the HR group in Yammer. Let's drop them in the team's HR team, right? And so that one single construct called an Office 365 group is really what allows us to do that. And so imagine where we've dropped every employee into this company communications group, or maybe everybody in Building 26 into a group called, Building 26 group in Yammer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and I'm going to create this announcement. It's going to say security alert, and I'm asking for a response. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here to the body of this, and I'm going to give them some details, and I'm going to say urgent, right? We've had a security incident in Building 22. Please fill out the following security form ASAP. Click here to check in. So one of the things that I can do in Yammer is I can point to them to a link somewhere. Well, this link that I'm going to point them to is actually to an Office 365 form. If you went and filled out the chance to win a WOBO, you used an Office 365 form that I've exposed to everybody in the world, and said, hey, you can go in and fill this form out. And so in this scenario, I'm just saying, hey, go fill out this form. So now the link is going to show up right there in the body of this Yammer post. So when I click on the submit button, what I want you to see is what the end user sees on the other side of this. And so we hear increasingly people talk about how important mobility is, right? So I want to be able to use what's in the palm of my hand the same way that I'm used to using what's under my arm or in a bag somewhere or underneath my desk. And so I'm going to show you what the mobile experience is. So just before we move forward, I want you to realize I'm going to click on the post button here. And what that's going to do is Flow, very similar to what Angus showed you, is going to pick up the fact that we have an urgent announcement. And it's then going to go, and Flow is going to send this out to mobile devices to say, hey, it's kind of like a miniature Amber Alert, right? And so here's how that looks. So here's Diego on his mobile device. And notice that Flow, not only are we sending this announcement, and it's going to hit your inbox in Yammer, and if you go to Yammer and look at your feed, it's going to hit the top of your feed in Yammer. But now we're also making sure by giving you kind of this miniature Amber Alert experience using Flow to say, hey, let's notify you on your device. and say, look, we have an emergency, right? We have an urgent security check-in building 22. So what Diego's going to do on his mobile devices, he's going to click on that. And so it's going to bring him to Flow, and it's going to basically say, hey, click here to check in. You'll see that link down there right under the urgent security check-in building 22. So when he clicks on that, notice what happens. It brings him to forms.office.com. So it's bringing him directly to the form that he's going to come in and fill out. And notice he didn't get any prompts, right? So if he selects no here, are you in building 22? There's nothing to see. But if he selects yes, then we're super interested in more data. So we have branching where we can say, hey, are you safe? And he says yes, because I'm the glass half full guy. And so I can say, hey, we'd like to know, what is your current situation? Do you need help, right? And so he's going to say, hey, I'm in the break room with others, and I'm safe. And so now what hopefully you saw when we started filling the form out is the fact that we actually collected who was filling the form out, right? So that's an option as you're using these Office 365 forms, is you can say, do I want them to enter data into this form anonymously, or do I want to track who the person is? And so in this scenario, I said, because that's what the requirement usually is from our customers, we want to know and keep track of people that are filling out the form, and then we want to be able to get data from them as they're filling it out. And so super slick experience here. And again, it combines Office 365 forms with Flow and Yammer as kind of the conduit for, in this scenario, it was corporate communications or security, saying, hey, I want to target this group of people and send them this alert, and then have them go fill this form out. And so really, really slick way of combining the value of Yammer, which again connects silos, gives your leadership team a voice, and engages all the employees, changes corporate culture, et cetera. And so just, we're continually adding more scenarios that add more value to your organization, powered by Yammer. So it concludes the 3 scenarios we wanted to walk you through. Please don't forget, we love giving away this Wobo wallet. So make sure you go point your browser to aka.ms/Wobo so that you have a chance to win. You'll also see what the experience is in filling out one of those Office 365 forms. And I don't want to forget, next week, and we're changing the date on this. So usually we have a Try This at Work session every Thursday. Because Angus is in Australia, we did him a favor and said, hey, we're going to do this on Thursday, so you're not sitting there presenting at midnight on Friday night. And so so here we are, we're doing this on Thursday. But next Tuesday we have an expert that is a colleague of mine, and he's going to deliver a 30-minute session on usable AI for everyone in your business. So it's really powered by Power BI, which is our de facto standard for data analysis and visualization. So we'd love to have you back next Tuesday, 4/16 at 10 a.m. If you want to go and download the iCalendar, just go to TryThisAt.Work. Again, TryThisAt.Work, and you'll be able to see it right on the splash screen right after this event is done, so that you can download that iCalendar. So we appreciate you joining again. Hopefully this has been of value. Angus, I really appreciate you hopping on and sharing some of the great work that you guys are doing from the Yammer team with all of our beloved customers. We look to have you guys back. Please invite other colleagues within your organization for the future Try This at Work sessions. Thanks and goodbye for now.